I think I always knew I was different. Not in the dramatic, world-shifting way some people describe it. More like a quiet, creeping realization that came in pieces over the years. A subtle awareness that settled in my chest, tightening just a little every time a classmate said, "That's so gay," or made some lazy joke about two guys holding hands. I didn't have the words for it then, but the feeling was loud enough. By the time I hit high school, everyone else seemed to know too. I never came out, not formally. I didn't raise my hand in class and announce it, but I didn't exactly hide it either. I wasn't flamboyant, but I wasn't pretending to be straight. My voice had a softness to it. My clothes were a little more put together. I liked poetry, not football. I avoided locker rooms like they were radioactive. And apparently that was all it took for the rumors to spread like wildfire. It started slowly, the side glances in the hallway, the sudden hush in conversations when I walked by. Then the whispers turned to distance. People stopped sitting next to me in class. Group projects became a nightmare of awkward silences and barely concealed discomfort. Even people I used to be close with began drifting away, like my presence alone made them uneasy. It was lonely, more lonely than I can describe. But then there was him, Caleb. He wasn't like the others. He didn't make a big deal of anything. He didn't try to defend me or pretend to be some kind of hero. He just treated me like a person. Like nothing about me made me different. Like I wasn't a rumor or a punchline. It started during sophomore year. We had English together first period every morning. The seat next to me was always empty. Every other desk was filled, but mine sat in a perfect little bubble of avoidance. Until the day Caleb walked in late, coffee in one hand, hoodie half-zipped, and without hesitation, slid into the seat beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember that moment in perfect detail. The sound of his backpack hitting the floor, the faint scent of citrus and sweat on his skin, the way his knee accidentally bumped mine under the desk, and how he didn't flinch away. Just a simple, "Hey man," like he hadn't just stepped into enemy territory. That day something shifted. First I thought it was a fluke, a one-time thing. Maybe his usual seat was taken. But then he did it again, and again. And pretty soon we were partners in class discussions, study buddies for tests, occasional lunch companions in the courtyard. He didn't ask me about the rumors, didn't dance around them or pretend they didn't exist. He just talked to me about books, music, how much he hated math, the weird dream he had the night before. And little by little I started to feel human again. It wasn't that Caleb was fearless. He definitely noticed the way people looked at us when we laughed too hard or leaned too close. I saw it in the way his eyes flicked toward the whispers in the hallway. I knew he heard the jokes, some of them cruel, some just ignorant. But he never flinched, never pulled away. He wasn't like the others. He didn't make a big deal of anything. He didn't try to defend me or pretend to be some kind of hero. He just treated me like a person. Like nothing about me made me different. Like I was. There was one day in particular I'll never forget. We were walking back from the library, laughing about something stupid. I think I had made some sarcastic comment about one of our teachers, and he laughed, like really laughed, head back, mouth wide open. And then someone muttered under their breath as they passed us, "Faggots." Just one word, hissed like venom. I froze. My stomach dropped. I had heard it before plenty of times, but not like that, not with someone beside me. Not with someone I cared about, potentially caught in the crossfire. I looked at Caleb, waiting for the recoil, for him to step away, act like he didn't know me. But he didn't even blink. He kept walking, and then he turned to me and said, "Anyway, what were you saying about that book again?" Like it didn't even register. Or maybe like it did and he just didn't care. That moment, that was the first time I thought I might be falling for him. Not just because he was kind. Not just because he stayed when everyone else left. But because he made me feel safe, seen. Like I didn't have to shrink myself to fit into the world. But I also knew better than to hope for too much. Caleb had a girlfriend. Not in the cliché movie kind of way. It wasn't some dramatic love triangle. He didn't flirt with me or lead me on. He was just kind and beautiful and completely unaware of the fact that he'd become the brightest part of my day. I tried to ignore it, to be satisfied with what we had, our conversations, our quiet moments, the occasional brush of his arm against mine. But I'd be lying if I said it was enough. Some days the ache was unbearable, and still I stayed close, because a part of me would rather hurt quietly beside him than feel nothing at all. And honestly, I don't know what that says about me. Maybe that I was desperate. Maybe that I was naive. Or maybe just that, in a world that kept trying to push me to the margins, he was the first person who made me feel like I belonged. I wasn't the type to journal. But during that time, I started scribbling things down, mostly about Caleb. Thoughts I couldn't say out loud. Feelings that had no real outlet. One entry still haunts me to this day. He probably doesn't know what he's doing to me. How every smile feels like a promise I'm not allowed to keep. How I go home and replay our conversations in my head like they meant something more. Maybe I'm just lonely. But maybe I'm in love with him. And yeah, I knew it was hopeless. He wasn't gay. Or at least he didn't act like it. He talked about girls. He kissed his girlfriend in the hallway, arms wrapped loosely around her waist. But sometimes, when it was just the two of us, there were moments, brief flickers, that made me question everything. Like the time we were studying at his place. It was late, and we were lying on the carpet in his room, surrounded by textbooks and half-empty soda cans. The lamp was dim. His music played softly from the corner speaker. Some indie band I hadn't heard of, the lyrics sweet and melancholy. And he looked at me, really looked at me, his eyes holding mine for just a little too long. I said something stupid. I think I made a joke about how I was going to fail our English exam. But he didn't laugh. He just kept staring. Then softly said, "You're a lot stronger than you think." I swallowed hard, not knowing how to respond. Then, without warning, he reached over and gently tugged a thread off my sweater. His fingers lingered against my wrist for a second longer than they needed to. Felt like electricity. But nothing happened. He didn't move closer. He didn't pull away either. We just lay there, side by side, the silence wrapping around us like something sacred. And for a moment I let myself believe. The thing about unspoken feelings is that they build up, like pressure under the surface. You can ignore them, bury them, pretend they don't exist. But they don't go away. They wait, until one day you can't hold them in anymore. It happened on a rainy Thursday. The kind of day where the sky looks like it's been drained of all color. Caleb and I had stayed after school to work on a project. Something boring and forgettable. The building was nearly empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed quietly. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Or the fact that we'd been sitting so close for so long, our knees brushing now and then. Or maybe it was the way he kept looking at me like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. But I turned to him and said, "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. Of course. I hesitated. My throat was dry. Do you ever wonder what it would be like? With someone different. His brows furrowed, just slightly. Different how? My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. I didn't say the word. I didn't have to. He looked at me, eyes scanning my face like he was trying to read between the lines. Then he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "I think about a lot of things," he said. "More than people probably know." The air between us crackled with tension. I nodded, pretending to understand. Pretending I hadn't just cracked open my chest and handed him everything inside. He didn't say anything else. We packed up our things. Walked to the front doors in silence. The rain was still coming down, steady and soft. He offered me a ride home. I said no. I needed the walk. But as I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. Not hard, just enough to stop me. "I don't avoid you," he said. "You know that, right?" I looked at him, startled. "Yeah, I know." He nodded, then let go. "Okay, good." And just like that, he was gone. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because he rejected me, he hadn't, not exactly. But because I realized how deeply I had fallen. And how uncertain everything still was. I wanted clarity. A confession. Something concrete I could hold on to. But Caleb was a mystery I couldn't solve. A puzzle made of half-glances and unspoken truths. I didn't know if he felt anything for me, or if he was just kind. And kindness, when you're desperate for love, can feel like something more, can wreck you. But I couldn't stay away. I didn't want to, because even if he never looked at me that way, even if I spent every day aching in silence, he was still the only one who didn't treat me like I was contagious. The only one who never avoided me. And that, at the time, felt like enough. Junior year faded into senior year, and everything intensified. The pressure of college applications, the looming end of high school, the slow realization that this chapter of our lives was closing whether we were ready or not. And through it all, Caleb was still there, still beside me, still treating me like I mattered. We didn't talk about that rainy day again. The tension simmered just beneath the surface, but neither of us reached into it. I think we were both afraid of what we might find, or what we might lose if we gave it shape. Instead, we clung to the rituals we'd built. Study nights, shared playlists, the occasional Friday afternoon walk home when his girlfriend had other plans. She didn't like me. That much was obvious. She never said it outright, but I could feel it every time she passed me in the hallway without a glance. Every time she clung to Caleb's arm when I was around, eyes narrowing just slightly. Couldn't blame her. She probably sensed the way I looked at him, the way my voice softened around him. Maybe she saw what even he didn't seem to see. But she didn't have to worry. I never crossed that line. I stayed in my lane, even when it tore me apart. Because I knew what it felt like to be on the outside. To be the one people whispered about. And I refused to become the villain in someone else's story, no matter how badly I wanted to be the hero in my own. Prom season came, and with it, the usual storm of awkwardness and expectations. I wasn't planning on going. The idea of squeezing into a tux and dancing under fairy lights while pretending I wasn't invisible sounded like torture. But one afternoon, Caleb brought it up while we were walking home. "You're going, right?" he asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. Doesn't seem like my thing." He gave me a look. "Come on. It's our last year. You can't miss it." I looked at him, trying to keep my voice even. "You'll be there with her. It's not really my scene." He was quiet for a beat. Then he said something that stayed with me for weeks. "Yeah, but it won't feel the same if you're not there." I didn't know what he meant. I still don't. But that night I bought a ticket. Prom was surreal. The gym was decorated like a budget fairy tale, streamers, paper lanterns, a DJ booth that kept cutting in and out. But everyone looked beautiful, polished, like this was the moment they'd all been waiting for. I felt like a ghost in a suit. I stood off to the side for most of the night, sipping flat punch and trying not to let my nerves swallow me whole. Caleb danced with his girlfriend, smiled for photos, did everything he was supposed to do. And yet, he kept glancing at me. Every few minutes I'd catch him looking, like he was checking to see if I was still there. And each time our eyes met, something in my chest tightened. Eventually, the slow songs started. The kind that make everyone pair off and sway in circles. I was just about to leave when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was, Caleb, smiling, nervous. "Dance with me," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Come on. Just one." I looked around. Eyes were already turning toward us. I could hear the whispers forming. "Caleb," I started. He cut me off. "Screw them." And then he took my hand. Right there, in front of everyone. And we danced. I didn't know where to look. My hands shook against his shoulders. But he just smiled, pulled me a little closer, and whispered, "You're not invisible. Not to me." The world spun. Time slowed. For a few minutes, I let myself exist fully in that moment. In the warmth of his touch, the steady beat of his breath, the way our feet moved in sync without thinking. I don't know what it looked like to everyone else. But to me, it felt like truth. After that night, things didn't go back to normal. They couldn't. Not because anything dramatic happened. There was no kiss.
No confession.
Just change. We didn't talk about it. He didn't explain. I didn't ask. But something between us shifted, something irreversible. In the weeks that followed, I started to pull back. Not out of anger, but self-preservation. I knew I couldn't keep living in the in-between. Caleb noticed. Of course he did. One day he cornered me after class. Are you avoiding me? I hesitated.
No.
I'm just tired. He nodded slowly. I miss you. And all I could say was, yeah, I miss you too. Then I walked away. Because sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, being seen isn't the same as being chosen. Graduation came like a train you can hear in the distance for months, and then suddenly it's there, roaring past. Caps, gowns, awkward photos with teachers I'd barely spoken to. Everyone pretending not to be terrified of what came next. Caleb and I didn't have many moments together that day. He was swarmed by family, his girlfriend clinging to his arm. I watched from a distance as he laughed with his friends, his smile as bright and effortless as ever. He glanced at me once, across the courtyard. Just one quick look, but it held so much. A silent thank you, a goodbye, a regret, maybe all three. I nodded, then turned away, and just like that, the high school chapter of our lives ended. The summer after graduation was strange. I spent most of it working part-time and preparing for college. I didn't hear from Caleb. I didn't expect to. But then, one night in late July, I got a text from an unknown number. You busy? I knew it was him before I even replied. He picked me up 15 minutes later. Same beat-up car. Same scent of mint gum and laundry detergent. We drove in silence for a while, through the quiet back roads just outside of town. Windows down. Crickets buzzing in the dark. Eventually, he pulled into an old lookout spot we used to visit when we needed to escape. The town stretched out below us, lights flickering in the warm summer haze. He turned off the engine and stared straight ahead. I broke up with her, he said. I swallowed. Why? His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Because it wasn't fair. To her. To me. He looked at me then, and this time there was no hesitation. No confusion. I don't know what I am, he said. I've been trying to figure it out. But what I do know is that when I was with her, I kept thinking about you. Couldn't breathe. He continued. Not just about prom. Or that night at the library. All of it. You were always there. In my head. In my chest. I didn't know what to do with that, he admitted. So I did nothing. And that hurt you. I know it did. I looked at him, heart pounding. Why now? His voice was quiet. Because you were the only person who made me feel like I could be anything. Like maybe there's nothing wrong with the way I feel. Silence settled over us. And then, softly, he reached for my hand. Fingers trembling, he laced them through mine. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a movie scene. It was real, messy, scared, honest. And it was enough. That night, we sat there until the sky began to turn pale. He told me about all the ways he doubted himself. The way the fear of being seen, really seen, had made him hide behind safety. Behind expectations. I told him about the loneliness. The weight of loving someone you thought you could never have. And for once, there were no half-glances. No guessing. Just truth. When he dropped me off that morning, we didn't make promises. We didn't define anything. We just hugged. Longer than friends do. The kind of hug where you don't want to let go. Because letting go means stepping back into a world that doesn't always make room for people like us. But this time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt real. College separated us. Different cities. Different paths. We kept in touch for a while. Late-night texts, occasional phone calls. But life is complicated. People grow in different directions. Still, I think about him. Not in a desperate, heartbroken way. But in that quiet, lingering way that some people stay with you. He was the first person who didn't flinch. The first who chose to sit beside me when everyone else walked away. And no matter how things turned out, I'll always be grateful for that. Because when you're 16, 17, 18, and the world makes you feel like a mistake, all it takes is one person to look at you and say, I see you.